What is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining me are my two great co-hosts, Fede Perez and Ralph Hannah. And guys, here we are. We're on another episode of Guarani Vision. It is finally February. Obviously, it is certainly an interesting sort of week that we've had in Paraguayan football, from the players abroad, from the teams that are playing in international competitions, and to the Apertura. We're going to talk about that in just a bit, but let's go to someone that is clearly enjoying the heat. Here in the United States, or at least both of our parts where I live and where Ralph lives, we've been dealing with some extreme cold, some record cold, some snow as well. But there, Fede, you're enjoying the heat, and hey, I'm sure everyone is also enjoying the football that we've been seeing on all fronts. Be it the players that are playing abroad, the national teams that are playing nearby, actually, and also the teams in the Apertura and the international competitions.
Hi Roberto, hi Rob, hi to everyone listening to Guarani Vision. Great to be back for another episode. And you know how it is, Roberto. When you talk about weather, when you talk to somebody that's over on the other side of the world, they say, "Oh, it's cold over here." I'm thinking, "Oh, I want to be over there." And when you talk to somebody that's freezing their ass off, they're thinking, "No, I want to be in Paraguay where it's really warm." It's actually been really hot here. It's been so hot that even football has had to change their hours, their game time. Moved it up about half an hour, I believe, the games this weekend. The FA, after seeing that the temperatures were just going to be pretty much on highs, we're talking about close to 100 degrees for you guys over there, almost feeling like over 40 degrees for us over here in Celsius. But it has to do with this time of the year, and players are, most of them, accustomed to it. The new ones are the ones that usually have a hard time, especially the players that come into the country for the first time. The ones that were playing in Europe. We have players that have been playing in Ukraine, and those are really cold places. And then you come to Paraguay, you really feel the difference, right? But talking straightly about the football, guys, damn, we have a really good weekend with really good games. You look at all the games that are going to be played this weekend after a long week of practices for most of the coaches. We're in front of some really good showdowns. We have the first couple of coaches that are running out of the jobs because they haven't been able to win yet. There are a couple of teams that are winning lists as we're heading into this week number 4, and definitely a whole bunch of things to stand out. I don't know if I have to pick one performance out there of Paraguayans around the world. I think I'm gonna go with what I saw this weekend from La Pantera, guys. The Panther doing his thing in Mexico. I don't know if you guys saw that goal that he scored. I'm talking about Robert Morales, the ex Cerro Porteño, somebody that's been trying to come back into shape, I would say, in this last, year and a half, probably. But he looked really good already last year playing for Toluca. Now he changed teams, right? And he scored, what was it, a bicycle kick, right? Pretty much against San Diego, playing for Pumas, his new team this year in CONCACAF Champions Cup. So really happy with that goal. That was probably one of my favorite goals this week from a Paraguayan abroad. And then we also had Alan Nunez, right, who scored his first goal in European football, playing for Nacional of Portugal against the giant Sporting Lisboa, just to mention a couple of Paraguayans that did their thing this week. We don't leave anybody out here in Guarani Vision. Roberto, Ralph, you guys knows how it is. We're in top of every Paraguayan that's doing their thing around the world.
There we are, and we're also getting some love from also just being on top on TikTok, because obviously we've been seeing some funny comments, and we appreciate everyone that's been tuning in and liking and commenting, and it feels for them that it's like, wait a minute, why are these guys speaking about Paraguayan football in English? It was very funny to see, Ralph. But no, in all seriousness, yeah, it's been a good week. We've been obviously seeing a lot of games from everyone involved in Paraguayan football, be it male or female. And yeah, I mean, Robert, I guess speaking on the Robert Morales deal, fantastic goal. And look, I think, like I've said on countless occasions, you feel as if though that number 9 spot, the striking spot, is still open for anyone. And I think every single game and every single moment that you see, like if a player is not playing well, but another one is, well, I'm sure Gustavo Alfaro feels as if though that he's checking on him and be like, okay, yeah, maybe this guy can work, and maybe this guy is not going to work for me. All those little things. It's like every game matters, and we're still roughly a month and a half away until the friendlies against Morocco and Greece. But all those little moments of what Morales did, even if it was in a spectacular form, I think that count for someone like Alfaro to consider him.
Yeah, we're saying it every week now because the focus often shifts back to there and the national team and what people can be doing. So there's all these good performances happening. I really like the Morales goal because yeah, he scored for Paraguay in a World Cup qualifier way back in Ciudad del Este and in that game, and he got injured as he scored, and then that kind of stopped a possible move to Europe, and he's ended up in Mexico. And so all of these players, and we're going to talk about one today when we talk about Dos de Mayo as well, like players that have been to Europe, shown that kind of skill, and even been to World Cups. I'm talking about Diego Acosta, who scored the winner for Dos de Mayo. They've been to World Cups with Paraguay at lower levels, and then, whatever happens, they don't quite make it to that high level at Europe where you want to see them. But at the moment, for Paraguay, the national team, like we've said, there's still a couple of spots open, especially in that forward line. So anybody who's shown glimpses in the past and is able to maybe start a little run of form with some of that talent we know they have, they could be knocking on the door for Alfaro to consider.
Yeah, no, and totally. And actually you remind me of those like moves. And we saw two big moves in the last day of the transfer window. So the first one I guess we should talk about is a player that obviously is on the national team in theory, or at least is always being considered. Hugo Cuenca, going to Spain. He's and obviously this is someone that has a Spanish passport and is obviously, willing to was even considered by the Spanish national team at one point. He's off to Burgos in La Liga 2. So obviously he leaves Genoa, and goes on loan to Burgos for the last remainder of the season. They're fighting for there, and obviously this would be big for him, Fede, in a way. I'll start with you to really just get playing minutes because that's exactly what he hasn't gotten in over there in Italy. That we technically has never made his professional debut in the league perspective, and we didn't see that at all. So for him to get this move, that's something that he couldn't do at Milan, and obviously he couldn't do at Genoa. Maybe he finally gets his chance over there in Spain in the second division at Burgos.
Yeah, I like these last minute moves. It has to do a lot with the World Cup and obviously these players trying to get into form, trying to get in shape. And I don't know what happened with him in this last team, right? Where he barely had any opportunity, really. He's always been on the national team radar because Alfaro really likes his quality. He likes, everything that he can bring to the game. I think he might even be a sub or a replacement for a Julio Enciso kind of thing, right? Because he is that creative. He has that spark on him, and he's always been that interesting talent, one-on-one, playing really close to the line. So he's always a player to consider, especially with Alfaro. You never know what kind of player he wants to take to the World Cup. I think he's gonna try to take a player like that. And then you have other players making big moves. I think the other signing that really caught my attention this week was probably Carlos Gonzalez going to Independiente del Valle, right? That's another move of a player that wants to go to a team that usually does well internationally and locally. So I think these are players that want to get on the radar. I don't know how it's going to go for Hugo Cuenca. It's been really hard for him to get minutes, guys. And I haven't seen much of him lately to even think, okay, this player right now is playing this way. He has to get on the rhythm. He has to start playing 2-3 games at least on a row for him to be considered. As of right now, I wouldn't take him to the World Cup, guys. He hasn't been playing lately.
Yeah, and well, another guy that I think we should definitely be talking about that also made a move. I don't want to say it's a surprising one, but certainly one that uh, raised some eyebrows. Gustavo Caballero. Gustavo Caballero, also another player going on loan from Santos, but off to England, off to the Championship and playing for Portsmouth. So he becomes the first ever Paraguayan to play in Portsmouth. They're actually playing right now. We'll see if he makes his debut today. They play Preston North End at the time of recording. So, but Ralph, I'll go to you, and obviously chime in with your thoughts on Cuenca's move to Spain, but the Gustavo Caballero move. I mean, we kind of saw that this is a guy that's already been playing for Santos. He's gotten a few minutes there. He hasn't been playing a lot, but he's definitely got more than what's it called than Cuenca has. And certainly we've obviously seen the talent that he had when he was at Nacional, even when he was at Ameliano. Pietad as well. Obviously, with the national team, he was a part of that U23 team that went to the Olympics. He played very well in that competition. So a move like this, it's not surprising for the talent of of the caliber of his talent. But I think it's also a sense of like, hey, I want to go in and prove myself at a better league in theory, and competitively like the championship, and try to convince again Alfaro that, hey, one guy's not playing, one guy's not been performing, or he's been lack of form. But hey, if I can impress in a competitive championship in Europe as well, then you can give me a chance to play for the national team.
Yeah, and Gustavo Caballero's career has kind of been like that, right? I mean, he was at Emiliano, started raising some eyebrows, doing well. I remember in Nas before he went to Nacional, I think his agency, they were trying to move him on. They're trying to get him into a bigger place. He ends up in Nacional. He's playing Copa Libertadores. I remember he scored at the beginning of last year in the Libertadores. And then between that was when he went to the Olympics, and he wasn't really meant to go to the Olympics, but because of injury, he ends up finding his place in there, and not just like in the squad. He started playing some games, and it's because I think what Gustavo Caballero has is very interesting for teams, and maybe why Portsmouth decided to take the risk on him is even though he's like a winger, he likes to get in the box. He's very good at getting in the box and making a kind of nuisance of himself. And he's got a bit of the defensive capabilities. He's done very well at that in terms of today you have so many wingers that have to basically help defend as well because of the way football is now. You can't just have somebody hanging up hoping to receive the ball. And so he's got that ability. It's a strange move though in the sense that you don't hear Santos to Portsmouth from one port town to another, but you don't hear that very often. Um, I'd love to know. I'd love to try and find out how it came about actually with this transfer. Where did Portsmouth see it? Was it a last minute thing because they have some injuries in that position and they just found Caballero available? But either way, I think it's for him, this is a huge opportunity. Like we're talking about, you're saying World Cup, it's getting a career, maybe getting a foot in Europe and managing to establish something. And just in comparison to Hugo Cuenca, I mean, for me, the championship is a level way above the second division of Spain. So he's going to be playing. I don't know what the crowd is today at Fratton Park, but I'm guessing he's playing in front of about 20,000 people. The game is probably on TV. It's a different league to what the second division of Spain is, where Burgos is a beautiful town. So Cuenca gets to go from Genoa to Burgos. So he gets to go to two beautiful towns in Europe. But then he's going to have to do something incredible to get himself back up to the level of top division Europe, if that makes sense. Because we've seen it before, Sergio Diaz went to Lugo. He unfortunately got injured, but then he never found his way back in Europe at a high level. We had Javi Acuna, who was at Mallorca, but when they were in second division in Spain, and I think he got some games with Watford actually, so he did do championship as well, Javi Acuna, but then he ended up back in Paraguay, and again, so it's a real sliding doors, I think, for Cuenca to get some. He needs to do something special, I think, so we don't see him back in Paraguay without having really had a go in Europe. For Caballero, I think it's also a great opportunity as well. That he'll have that, what, 3 months, 4 months where he can try and make a difference. And Portsmouth are fighting relegation, so it's a big game for him, but he's a big season for him or end of season. But he's used to it because, of course, at Emiliano, he was in a very similar position when they were just trying to fight to stay up. He was there when they pretty much first come up. So yeah, some interesting transfers thrown out at the just on that last day, right? Which gives us new teams to follow on social media and new teams to support.
And Santos as well. You got to remember, he also was, part of a relegation race to not go down with Santos. So, he's used to it also in Brazil. But Fede, I mean, just to close on this, I mean, we've seen the transfers, like you said, Carlos Gonzalez. You see that with Hugo Cuenca. You see that with Gustavo Caballero. Who do you feel made the right choice? And if you're Gustavo Alfaro, you're thinking, yeah, th this guy did the right decision to make the transfer, and that's gonna help me consider him more on the national team if necessary.
Oh, it's so hard to answer that right now because it has to do with, the player, how he arrives, late to his new team and, just how much impact he can cause in his new club if he gets those opportunities right away or if he's gonna have to wait. for his time. For Gustavo Caballero, I mean, this is probably once in a lifetime opportunity. He's already 24, guys. I don't know if he's gonna get another call, from the European football. For Hugo Cuenca, he's a bit younger. I think his whole career has been around Europe so far. But for a player like Gustavo Caballero, to get this kind of opportunity and to have it only for a couple months, like Ralph was saying, I mean, you got to do everything you can in these games. You got to show off because you might just go back to South American football if you don't do what's right. And he was playing alongside Neymar, or at least in Neymar's team. So, and that's a team that really draws a lot of attention. And he really stood out in a couple of games there. He was showing his stuff, so I'm really happy for this move. A surprising move, I would say, in the market, but it's a great opportunity for him. I want to see him get off right away. And for Carlos Gonzalez, I mean, he's been looking for that spot, right? I mean, he didn't find it in news. He had a really rough year personally last year. Hopefully, he gets back on track with the goals this year. We need strikers to get hot. And I think he's going into a team that's usually plays offensively here in South America. They're always trying to do big things in Libertadores. So I'm gonna look into Independiente del Valle because again, we do have another Paraguayan there. They've hired a whole bunch of Paraguayans in these last couple of years, even though they are kind of an academy for Ecuadorian football only, but they usually look for players like this that have experience even in national team level. And Carlos Gonzalez, I think, is a player that can get back on track, guys.
Ralph, what about you? Who are you keeping your eye on the most?
Of these three specifically, or
Yeah,
just
or just like anyone, I guess, in the window that moved as well. I mean, I'm sure we talked about it more, but like, I guess, yeah. I mean, in general, or just from these three, yeah.
Ángel
honestly,
Romero,
and
whoever you want, bro.
Yeah, just like, who do you feel
well,
like this guy is like, this move is going to be so important for him, and I'm waiting to see if that's enough for him to go
yeah.
to the World Cup, basically.
Well, is it maybe a bit left field, but really is I'm interested in Cantero that went to Russia because left back's kind of that one slot where I don't feel we're playing Junior Alonso there for the national team. When we tried to play Sandes, which I think is what he wants to do, it hasn't quite worked. So there's a
You
thing
got Diego
about
Leon. You got Diego Leon as
yeah,
well.
we have Diego Leon not playing. We have Blas Riveros playing really well, but in Paraguay. So there's all these like sort of what's the word?
Choices.
There's all these kind of doubts over this
Yeah.
position. And so Cantero is a player who has the profile of somebody like Leon and Riveros, very attacking, likes to go forward. And now he's in Orenburg in Russia. So if he is able to do it at a higher level, then that could be interesting. And suddenly he like finds his way. And again, he's a player that's done U17s, U20s with Paraguay. So the coaching staff will have seen him, they know what he's about. So that's what I'm interested in. But I honestly have not been following, but I'm pretty sure Russia isn't starting until March. It's similar to MLS. So you have like the disadvantage that you don't get as many competitive games before the World Cup, which is also the MLS disadvantage and why I think MLS is actually they're shifting. They're going to end up shifting to the European calendar,
Hmm.
and you can see why this year because it's going to be a strange one. Like imagine just switching quickly, Argentina, right? If you're a Messi fan, Messi has not played a competitive game for a while, right? That he's just been playing friendlies and DePaul as well. So Argentina might be a bit concerned about that, for example, that two of their best players aren't playing competitively. But yeah, Cantero's one I'd be really interested to see, especially because Diego Leon's not got any minutes or nearly as many minutes as we would have hoped for Man United.
Absolutely. Yeah, obviously we'll keep tabs on all these guys and see how they do. But we're also going to keep tabs is what's going on in the Copa Libertadores as that started the other day. We saw Dos de Mayo, the first Paraguayan team, participate in the first stage, taking on Alianza Lima over there at the Estadio Rio Parapiti in Pedro Juan Caballero. And, obviously it was a big event. It was their first ever game in their history playing in an international competition, and certainly against a team that is, obviously very used to playing in these competitions with Alianza Lima, one of the biggest teams in Peru, if not the biggest for some. And it was, an interesting game. You saw obviously the differences in the way that both these teams were really going for this. Eduardo Ledesma really I even go back to the video of when they were doing the cooling break, Paulo Guede, the coach of Alianza Lima, really just going on them, really say, hey guys, we got to do this, we got to do blah blah blah. And then there was Ledesma being a bit more chill, more relaxed, and hey, I guess it ultimately came the way it did for Dos de Mayo because in the 84th minute, it was Diego Acosta that got the winning goal, Ralph, for Dos de Mayo, their first ever goal, their first ever win. And yeah, now they get to go to Lima, to the Alejandro Villanueva to see if they can, win this tie and earn a historic uh, win in their series to move to the second stage of the Copa Libertadores. But man, it's been what a story as well for Diego Acosta. Someone that we're going back on the route of the track of Russia. He started his professional career over there in Russia. Then he made his move to Luqueño. Now playing for Dos de Mayo. I mean, it's such a wonderful story, I guess, to be the first ever player to score for your club for this club in international competition.
Yeah, what a brilliant night for Dos de Mayo because it even before the game, as people were lining up and you saw it on TV, people were saying, "Wow, what a nice stadium." And it's partly because CONMEBOL had done all those renovations, which I think we talked about before, but really looked good. I mean, it looked very nice. It looked like they were in a scenario that should be playing Copa Libertadores football. And then we saw the game itself, and it was kind of maybe as you'd expect in that Alianza Lima took the game to them. They weren't scared about being at the away leg and trying to defend or anything. And probably on the balance, I think the XG was definitely higher in Lima's favor. They had some good chances there. But the Dos de Mayo, we've talked about them at home. They went the whole 2024 year, 2024, they went unbeaten the whole year in Primera. I mean, they're a very strong team when they want to be at home. And that was something that Felipe Jimenez had done. And now Eduardo Ledesma, who was his assistant during that time, has managed to pick up upon. And like you were saying, Roberto, in the in the drinks break, he's very relaxed and probably because of two things. One, Ledesma's been there before. I mean, he's played World Cup qualifiers in Brazil against Brazil. He's played plenty of Copa Libertadores games and Sudamericana games with his time at Lanús. So yeah, he was relaxed, and I think he made the right choices, the right substitutions, because one of them, Acosta, comes on and scores the winning goal, which is a really good goal, right? Just on the edge of the box, the ball had been like blocked, rolling out to him, and boom, he hit it as good as he could and scored that goal. And yeah, Diego Acosta, really interesting story. He's one of those almost like lost generations of players that because he was about 17, 18 as the pandemic hit, he didn't really find a place. So he'd been in on the books of Libertad. He'd gone to the under 17 Sudamericana, the World Cup. I think they even went to France that year. Well, maybe that was for the World Cup or the tournoi. I mean, he'd done a lot of stuff in national team, was really looking like he could be an interesting player along with Diego Duarte, who talking about players in Europe, he's in Portugal right now. He was in that squad. I think maybe Brian Ojeda was in the squad with him at one point. Definitely Wilder Vieira, Mati Segovia. So really a good group of players. But being at Libertad is very hard to get into the first team. They have so many good young players. And when the pandemic hit, youth football stopped. He's one of those players that didn't really find a place in Paraguay, something to do. So like you said, he ends up going to Russia. I think he played like 9 minutes in Russian football, not a huge amount, but he got that exposure and it was in Orenburg. And then he came back to Luqueña, picked him up, had a good season, and now Dos de Mayo have picked him up. So he's one of those players that the talent and the capability is there. He's just maybe never had the chance to have those run of games to prove it. He's 23 now. I think his first child was born like last year as well. So he's just like maybe maturing and stabilizing a bit after this very difficult early parts of his career, right? Where he was going all over the world, not being able to play football because of a pandemic. And so now maybe with some of that time and able to get those minutes in, we can start to see what he might be able to do at the level that we saw way back when he was in under 17s. But yeah, great result for Dos de Mayo. I mean, historic result. Now the question is, can they do it in Lima?
Well, I mentioned this guy's last episode around. I was believing in this team. I was believing, the whole thing of at home we're really strong and we can win this first game. And they did it. They pulled it off. Good strategy, really, from Dos de Mayo. They waited for the right moment, right, to hit the big team. Also, you knew that Alianza Lima was going to come all down on you eventually. The goalkeeper had to stop a couple of important balls. Again, Angel Martinez stood out. He's been doing really well Nobody, I believe, is even is contending for that spot as of right now. In defense, you always have much experience in this team, especially Cesar Castro, one of the leaders. He's been there from Intermedia, the second division, till now to play this international game for him. Must have been a special day for him and for a lot of these players that have done that long road to 2026 and have the opportunity to play a continental game like this one for CONMEBOL and for Libertadores. For the coach, it must feel really good also to have really good subs like Brian Ayala, who was probably the last signing they did, a player that did really well in 12 de Mayo a couple of seasons ago. He's coming back now because he didn't do that well in Luqueño. A couple of injuries have kind of been around him lately, and we'll see if he can get back into shape. But he came back and he's already playing. And then you have Sergio Freitas, who also came into this game. Those really fast kind of players that can make the difference offensively. They have a whole bunch of those players, guys. And one of them ended up being Diego Acosta, who came in the game and scored. He even said it, the best goal in his career so far. So this is no doubt about it, a highlight moment for him. For 12 de Mayo for Paraguayan football itself, I think, you look at the budget, guys. I mean, there was a lot of rumors and a lot of talks about this situation. The small team going up against the big giant team, 12 de Mayo, very low budget team in Paraguay. I think they're around $80,000 per month, around something like that. You look at the difference, and it's 4-5 times even more with Alianza Lima. They really invest to have a really good Libertadores. So it feels even better when you talk about a well-organized club with young local board members even that help out financially. The players have always been very professional. We've never heard of problems in that locker room. The group has always been very strong, maintaining their leaders, like I just mentioned. So I think it's a healthy environment for a team to develop and for a team to have a really good run in Libertadores, guys. That's what I expect from this 12 de Mayo. So good first game. Now get the job finished. Finish it in the second game with a tie. I'll be more than happy. And just another demonstration, right? I don't think this was needed, but Paraguayan football is in a much better place than Peruvian football right now, right? Historically, we have always been we have always had better results than them, but it's so funny nowadays with just media in general, with all these people doing social media and talking about these kind of games and saying, no, we're just gonna stop on these small little Paraguayan teams. And no. 12 de Mayo had the strategy, and they really pulled it off in the way that they usually win at home.
Yeah, no, totally. It's going to be very exciting to see what they can do over there in Peru next week. And, obviously it's going to be so big for a lot of these teams when they get to start their Copa Libertadores campaign. We're going to see that with Cedro. We're going to see that with Libertad, and other teams also in other competitions. So it'll be interesting to see what we've been going on. Let's do a little bit of an update in the Apertura. We obviously have Nacional still perfect after 3 games. Recoleta right behind them with 8 points. Cerro Porteño, right there below them with Olimpia as well. Obviously, teams that haven't won a single game yet are Trinidense, Rubio New, 12 de Mayo, as we just mentioned, and San Lorenzo, which will start because they are winless now in 4, and they sacked their manager Sergio Orteman, who was the first main manager to leave in the season so far in the Apertura, Fede. So I guess it was coming for Orteman to have his job done over there at San Lorenzo.
Yeah, San Lorenzo was the team that kind of snuck into first division, right? They weren't really, I would say, even in my radar, at least at the end of the year. Last year, we had that crazy last week where there was a whole bunch of teams that had the opportunity to get into that second spot, to come into first division with Rubio New, and it ended up being San Lorenzo, and they really didn't hire that many players, guys. At least you're not seeing them yet on the first team. They did hire about 15, 16 new players, but on the squad that Orteman put in these first games, I saw pretty much the same base of players that were playing in Intermedia, and I don't think most of those players were up to it in these first games, and so it looked really ugly for them, especially in this match against Recoleta, right? A team that plays fast-paced football, and they were really hot. They were really concentrated in every play, every little mistake El Rayadito made. Pretty much Recoleta turned it into a goal, and this was the first game they played at home. To lose the way they lost, it was a no way. It was, and they had to sack him, and so it's unfortunate because I thought Ortema was in it for the long run. I thought he was going to be at least on the job until mid-year, But if you start off this way for a team that's going to fight for relegation and you don't start winning, you can't even tie a match. It's going to be really hard for a team like this to stay in first division. So it usually goes down this way. The coach is the first one to go, and Sergio Orteman is the first coach to leave the job in a first team division in the Paraguayan league. I hate to see it because I had El Rayadito as one of the teams that could surprise everybody, but so far they are winningless, guys.
They're winners, but yesterday was the first time they really got badly beaten. So they lost two games 1-0, and then the Cerro game, they end up losing 4-2, but it's at the very end, and they fought back really well in that match. But there were 2 points that Fede picked up on. One, I mean, it looked really bad, and so losing 3-0, but also at home, right? I think that was the thing. They'd hardly lost at home last year in the Intermedia. We just talked about Dos de Mayo that built their survival and now have got into Libertadores on home form. We're going to talk about Rubio New, I'm sure, they had a great home record last year, and today they've got the derby, the Clásico against Trinidense. So yeah, you have to pick up those points, and especially against a team like Recoleta who have started really well. But for San Lorenzo, that's got to be a winnable game. So not just to lose it, but to lose it so badly, that might have just tipped the balance, I think, against Orteman, who really is kind of a hero for San Lorenzo, we have to say, because I mean he'd taken them up previously, even from third division to second to Primera, and now he'd done it again. He'd come in at the end and got them into Primera. So he's been one of their most successful managers, but yeah, I guess you just can't risk it in these short tournaments to lose four, to start by losing four. You need to turn something around, and like Fede says, the coach is the one to go, especially if they don't have the backing of the players, which I guess in this case the players weren't ready to support him. Unlike another coach, right? Lucas Barrios, who last night actually wanted to resign on live TV post game after they lost, but the players turned around and said they wanted him to continue.
Yeah, no, it's crazy that the start of the season has been so interesting, Fede. Obviously we got some games that are going to be coming up this weekend. We got sort of taking on Dos de Mayo, and I feel as if though that is a crucial game for both these teams, Nacional and Olimpia. Can Olimpia break the unbeaten streak by can Olimpia do that? Can Libertad, they play Guarani? Can Libertad also bounce back because both these teams are also on the same board? I mean, we got a good weekend of matches, Fede.
Yeah, really good weekend of matches. We even have the Trinidense Rubio New, right? The first time they're gonna go head to head. Rubio New coming back to first division. So we got that Clásico del Barrio, as they call it here, two teams from the same neighborhood of Trinidad. So that's gonna be a nice showdown also with a lot of people on the stands. I think it's the big first game for Vitamina Sanchez and this Olimpia also playing against this Nacional, who have pretty much their 11 out of memory, and Olympia's still trying to find their pieces. They're still trying to find their right form. I believe they're going to keep on changing. But from Olympia, we also had an update on the World Cup Stadium, which is something that I wanted to mention on this episode because I heard the president, Nogues, said this week, and I quote, "There's a lot of people that don't want the stadium to happen." That was a big statement from him, who has been running the club since the project of building the new stadium even began, right? He also mentioned that even though they've gone through a couple of minor setbacks, the calendar they posted on December on social media is very much underway. And this is the year, apparently, the stadium will begin its construction around mid-year, he said. He even confirmed that they recently signed with a Brazilian company, Arena Events and Venues. This is a company that was also responsible for already building a couple of World Cup stadiums, such as the Palmeiras Alianza Park and the Corinthians Arena. Well, the previously known Arenas Corinthia, nowadays called Neoquímica Arena. The stadium that Olympia wants to build is for over 45,000 fans. You go right now and see if if there's anything there. No, there's absolutely nothing. They took the stadium away, Olympia Stadium, already last year, and people have been kind of waiting, to see something from Olympia. There's been a lot of weird noises around this whole thing of the stadium. So it was really good to hear the president again at least say that everything's on track and that they will eventually, before mid-year, start the construction. We'll have to wait and see because so far everything has been kind of sketchy.
I
It's
think
kind of
I,
been a bit
I
sketchy. Go ahead,
think
Rob.
just on that point of the stadium, the pressure is on because we talked about Dos de Mayo, right? Dos de Mayo redid their stadium for CONMEBOL. I mean, it's not like they're building it from scratch, but we saw the money in action. Guarani is rebuilding theirs, and it's happening at the moment. Upane and the Paraguayan high performance centers received a bunch of money from CONMEBOL, and they're like doing it right now, getting everything ready. Huge projects ahead of the World Cup, this World Cup. So the pressure is kind of on with Olympia being like, everybody's doing stuff for 2026. Your one's for 2030. Like, you've got more time, but are you going to get started? One thing just for people that don't know Paraguay to understand the problem that Olympia has is their location is like the prime real estate of Asuncion. They're a very traditional team. That's where they've always played around there. It's like you're very close to the president's residence. You're very close to the American embassy. You're right next to a military. On the other corner is like a military base. It's not easy to get like huge trucks in and build a project like this without shutting down half the city, right? I mean, once if you shut down there on Mariscal Lopez, the road, if you shut that down, that's like most people's way of getting into work. So I mean, it's a very ambitious project, but yeah, it has a huge logistical issue. It's not like a US World Cup stadium that you're just building in the middle of nowhere and people will drive there. This is like in the very heart of the city, prime real estate. If they need to expand, they have to get military permission because they're so close to the base and the president's residence and the American embassy. So there it is a real big project. And yeah, let's hope it finally gets off the ground as they promised.
Absolutely. And another team that is doing well off the ground is the U20 women's team. Paraguay are playing now in the Sudamericana Sub-20 for women's football. They obviously are playing well at home soil, Ralph. They got their first two wins. Sorry, they got their first two results with a 4-0 win against Chile, Javier Martinez going on the score line as well, and Uruguay tying Paraguay 0-0. And obviously they're in a group with Venezuela, Colombia, and Chile. Three of those teams qualify to the final stage where they'll meet, obviously the big powerhouses of Brazil, Argentina, and so on. But a really good start for the U20 women's side as they look to qualify for this year's Women's World Cup in Poland that will happen later in September.
Yeah, that's right. And after the success last year of going to U17s, then you have Claudia Martinez called up for this, which I assume was allowed by Washington Spirit, which means she's instead of doing preseason, she's going to be playing these highly competitive games for them, but maybe it's not the highest level because it's under 20s. And as we saw, I think in the first game, she's very, very, very good for this level. She scored two, set up one, and was really, the too good for the opposition kind of thing. And Paraguay ran out 4-0 winners. They drew 0-0 last night against Uruguay, much tougher game, which I think saw a sending off as well for Fiorentine. So she's out for the next game. But I mean, I think the interesting thing here is talking about the U17s that did so well. Quite a few of them have been promoted up to this U20s. So the hope is that continuation. And so we saw the last goal in the 4-0 by Pamela Villalba. That's a player very good, very talented. Really well taken goal how she took it around the keeper, which is part of that technique that she has. And so I think Musi as well, who was captain, if I remember rightly, of the U17s, has moved up here. So again, like seeing some of these players and seeing now next level, next challenge, what can you do? I think it's very exciting because we talked about it last time, right? Claudia Martinez has opened the door or opened the world of possibilities for Paraguayan women's football like nobody expected. So now we have this great group of young players and what can they do? And can they go to another World Cup, which I think would really start to turn some heads and make Paraguay more of that destination you want to see. for women's football. And just actually a quick last point, of course, this week Arsenal beat Corinthians in the final of the or last week in the final of the first kind of Club World Cup equivalent. I can't remember what FIFA call it. But the fact that Arsenal needed extra time to beat a Corinthians team, which I wouldn't say any Paraguayan teams have really like challenged them recently, but they when they play Libertadores, I mean, those games aren't always 5-0, 6-0, 7-0. So you're starting to see that actually the level in South America is pushing itself and getting higher. And so this is another great opportunity to say, Olimpia, for example, by far the best women's team at the moment in Paraguay. If we can start trying to get to that Corinthians level, we're not that far off what really the top, the elite is. So it's a very exciting time, I think, and this tournament also being held at home in Paraguay is a great opportunity for local people to go and watch this as well, right? And see some of the stars of the future.
Absolutely, Fede. I think it's certainly something that people should take advantage of.
I'm aiming for the title, guys. I don't know about you guys, but after what we did in the under 70s last year in the South American Championship, I mean, we can aim again, maybe for the title in this under 20s, right? I believe the history in the under 20s in these kind of tournaments, it's all been for Brazil, all the titles so far. So we'll see if another national team can break through. We have the home advantage. We have one of the best players in the tournament, which is Claudia Martinez. A lot of people are going to the games because they want to see Claudia before she hits the US. This could be one of the last opportunities to see her, at least this year. And then, you have a lot of other exciting players that are also, I think, evolving. Ralph mentioned a couple of them. Pamela Villalba even being one of the leaders. She was captain in the second game. Also, you have Diana Benitez, a really nice fighter there in that midfield. She was one of the players that really caught the ball back for this team. But just to have Claudia Martinez out there making the difference, she even scored a head goal in the first game. I mean, just like Ralph said, I mean, this feels like too low of a level for her. I mean, I want to see her take it up eventually to the next level, and I want to see how she does there. Because as of right now, she's definitely in another league, I would even say, with these players. And she's the only one right now, I think, really ready for the senior, even national team. The rest, I think, they have that long journey. But Claudia, she's already there. She's even been playing lately for the qualifiers. And I really like what I'm seeing also from the coaches. The coaches are also being tested out, I believe, in these tournaments. The Brazilian that had the team for the under 17s last year is now the assistant of Gustavo Roma, which is the head coach of the under 20s. So they're definitely working together. They have really good resumes. They've done really good stuff in women's football, in Brazilian women's football, like Ralph said, which is obviously the strongest women's game we have here in South America. And as of right now, they're leading the team in good way. We started out pretty well, and we just need to make it to the World Cup at least. But I'm aiming for the title, guys. I think it's doable.
Very ambitious. And, another guy that, we'll go on our last topic about going for titles is a player that has performed so well. That's our Hoya, La Hoya, Julio Enciso, who is coming off a really good performance against AS Monaco in the Coupe de France. 2 goals of a spectacular first goal. And obviously, this is a player that, obviously we were keeping our eyes out as probably the most talented Paraguayan player abroad. And, certainly the 8 goals so far. Ralph for Strasbourg, they're obviously in the fight to compete for a Liga spot to go to Europe next season. They're obviously going to play in the Conference League round of 16, just waiting to see who they will play. They were the best team in the league phase, and now they're in the Coupe de France quarterfinals, and there's no PSG in that. They got Rems in their next game. But yeah, even with the new manager, Liam Ronsignor leaving to go to Chelsea, now comes Gary O'Neill to manage the side, but it still looks like Enciso has really been performing well, and it's good news for us, heading into the World Cup in 3 months' time, as him and Diego Gomez are the top goal scorers amongst all the Paraguayan players abroad in Europe.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think we were talking about it off camera, but he's playing, almost going to play the most minutes he's done in possibly in his career in a season, but definitely since he went to Europe, he's almost up to, like, he hasn't hit the 1,500 minute mark in a season, which sounds so low when you think about what Gustavo Gomez and Junior Alonso do. Those guys do crazy number of minutes. But he's getting that consistency and he's backing it up with the performances, with the goals, with the assists. And the goals, the player he is has changed so much at Strasbourg. No, both those goals in the Coupe de France are inside the box. The first goal is that talent, right? His feet are so quick to get past and get around the keeper and finish. I mean, before when we saw him in Brighton, when we saw him even in Ipswich, he was always trying to shoot from distance, score from distance, and you got the feeling partly it's where he had to play, but you felt like he was always trying to prove himself with something spectacular, and very often he did, winning goal of the season, but it wasn't sustainable. So there was always this question about the problem, the problem you had with Enciso was he was capable but he wasn't sustainable of doing the spectacular. So you needed to find a player that could be more consistent and maybe change his game a bit. And so he's been able to do that. And also to your point, Roberto, he's been able to do that under two different managers, which I think is so important because he was seen, I think, as a luxury player because of the way he played. And so some managers would say, okay, I want this guy in my team because I want to build around him. And Alfaro was great at doing that, right? With the national team of getting the team or getting him to play in the way Alfaro still needed him to play. But other managers are like, you know what, I'm going to find somebody else of similar skill set, maybe not as good, but just could be more consistent. And so the fact that he's now proving himself under two different managers, I think is really important. And just, just keep playing minutes, don't get injured, and let's see you at the World Cup because at the moment everything's on a perfect trajectory for Julio coming into the World Cup.
Yeah, don't even say the word, Ralph. Don't even say the word. I don't want to hear from here to the World Cup. Nobody's getting that. Nobody's gonna have any problems. Everybody's gonna be healthy, especially Julio Enciso. Oh, how I'm enjoying it so much. He's right back on track to even, catch the big team's attentions, guys. I mean, let's not forget he went to the French league to try to get minutes, but also to, might have an option for a bigger team next season. The World Cup is going to happen right in the middle, right? Obviously, it's going to have its impact, but he's playing so smart, right? He's barely making any mistakes with the ball. He's doing the right calls. You don't see him tracking back that much to have the contact with the ball. He feels so comfortable with the players around him. He's playing with a whole bunch of South Americans, which I think is also an advantage, to have a center forward that's also Argentine, and you feel the chemistry there with the teammates. Everybody's loving him, even the French fans. I mean, I don't know if you guys heard the chants after the games. They were loving him, and he loves that energy also. He loves feeling, I don't know if the most popular, but he loves feeling like a star, right? He wanted that stardom in the national team. He got that eventually. He wanted that with the other teams that he played, but now he's having that fantastic run, that fantastic moment that we wanted to see. And I want to see him just score and score because I think that's what he needs right now, just to feel confidence with the ball and have as many opportunities as he's getting on that box. So keep it up, Julio, because as of right now, he's probably one of the players that I'm enjoying the most. No doubt about it, as our Paraguayans that are making the difference.
100%. We'll obviously cover it as we always do here on Guarani Vision as we close out another great episode for myself, Roberto Rojas, Fede Perez, and Ralph Hannah. Thank you so much for listening in. See you soon.